Okay, welcome back. Today we're going to do a very important type of variable setup called it's called a type. What this allows you to do is group a bunch of variables together under one name, so you can keep track of them like they're one unit, they're one object, right? This is generally speaking used to represent a single entity within a program. So in a database program, for example, one record in the database would be a type. In a video game, each object that appears on the screen is going to be a type, something like that. I'm going to sort of demo how this works by doing this. Let's say we had Space Invaders, and this is our guy, right? So he's going to have several attributes, isn't he? So if this is our player, for example, he has a position. He's going to have an X and Y value. He might have a speed value. He might have a number of hit points value. He might have, well, he's certainly going to have an appearance or a graphic, right? So what does he look like? He may have, depending on what your game involves, you may have, if you have a weapon type or if you have a number of lives left or that kind of thing. So there's a bunch of values that go with this guy, right? All of these together help to describe this one figure in the game. In this case, there's a spaceship, right? So how do you represent that in code? You want to represent this all as one thing, right? So for example, in the code portion of this, you could, if you wanted to, do player X, player Y, player speed, player graphic, player whatever. Like you could keep doing that. And then all these would have to be global variables, and they'd all be separate. And you know what? That would work. But it limits you, because now imagine if you're trying to do enemies or bullets, and you don't know how many are going to be on the screen. You could say enemy X, but that's only one value. You could say enemy 1X, enemy 2X, enemy 3X. You could even do an array of enemy X if you wanted to. So you have 100 enemies or what. But that gets very awkward to work with. So what you do instead is you do a type. And this is your syntax for it. So you start with type and end type. And this is the name of the type. It's just like a variable. It's a name. You put it in there, and it has to correspond with what the type is for. When I make types, always put the word type on the end of the variable. That way I can't confuse it with any other variable that might be similar. Because example, I might have lots of things called player. I might have a move player function, and I might have a draw player or race player. I might have that kind of stuff. I put type here to keep that straight. Within the type, you have what are called fields, right? So everything that I just put up there, you could put as a field in here. Field graphics. Field weapon selected, something like that. Like depending on what your game is for, you could do all that kind of stuff. And you can put as many fields in here as you want. Hundreds of them. A field can be anything. All of my ones here are integers, but you can have, if you want to, float values. You can have strings. So if you wanted to, for example, say field name string, that'd be fine. You can even have arrays in here if you wanted to. Okay. So that's how you set it up. Now this doesn't do you any good yet, because when you set up a type, and remember, do this at the beginning of your program, because remember when we went back to that organization thing that I showed you many posts ago, types is at the top. It has to happen before you can do anything with it. So a type is like a blueprint. In this case it would be like a blueprint for the spaceship player, but the spaceship player doesn't exist yet. What you have to do is create what's called an instance of a type, okay? And this is how to create an instance. And for example, if I wanted to do player, generally what I'll do, you make it a global variable, player dot player type. So this is going to be the name of the instance over here. Again, that's a variable name. You can do whatever you want with that as long as it's appropriate. Then you have the period, and then you have the type name there, equals new player type. That will create a new instance of player type, and it will assign it to this variable. So it stores it here so you can reference it later on. You can talk about it. You can actually, we'll get into in a couple posts, you can actually create them without giving them a name like this, and you can still access them, but we're going to get to that in a bit. So for now, that is how you create an instance of a type, a real thing. That's like building the actual spaceship from this blueprint. Okay? Now, you can't do things like player equals 1 anymore because the player, the term player, encompasses all of these variables. It needs to know which one you're talking about. So when you want to reference something inside of a type, you put a backslash and then the name of the type, right? Like that. So anything. So if I wanted to move left, for example, minus player slash speed, that's how I'd move left, right? If I wanted to say equals player slash get hit. If he gets hit by something, then I could reduce his hit by 1, and they say if player hits is less than or equal to 0, then whatever, like blow up the player, or whatever's going to happen there. Make sense? All of these are used exactly like the normal variables you're used to already, except when they're inside of a type, you put this backslash. So it's the name of the instance of the type, not the type itself. I don't have player type here, I have player. Then a backslash, not a forward slash, and then the X. The backslash, if you're confused, is the one right next to the right shift key, not next to the enter key. Actually, it's the other way around. It's right next to the enter key, not right to the not next to the left or the right shift key. So that's how you make a type. We're going to be using those in your next project.